Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. This is our special election 2020 series, and today we're looking at Denver 2J, Denver ballot issue 2J, about pit bulls. And joining me today is April Steele, the CEO of the Denver Dumb Friends League. April, thanks so much for joining me.
It is such an honor.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you. April, by the way, is also a veterinarian. So has extraordinary credentials and got her vet degree right here at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. So it's just great having her on the show. I want to remind everybody that the election's November 3rd. Make sure you are registered to vote. You can go online with the Secretary of State's office or, of course, the Denver City and County Clerk's office and see if you are registered. If you're not registered, you can register online, and you can even vote on Election Day and register to vote first on Election Day, November 3rd, in case you've forgotten to do any of that. Both the state of Colorado and the city and county of Denver have published booklets explaining all of the various ballot issues, so please take advantage of it. They are also, those documents are also online. So you can read in depth about every ballot issue. And this year's ballot is extraordinarily long, so give yourself time to fill it out. So April, I want to start off with reading. I'd like to tell everybody what the proposal is and then what they'll see on their ballot. And then let's talk about it. So 2J says, shall the voters for the city and county of Denver adopt an ordinance authorizing the city to grant a provisional permit to owners or keepers of a pit bull, provided the owners microchips his or her dog, the animal, and complies with additional requirements set by Denver Animal Protection. So tell me, why is this a good idea? Because so many people are afraid of pit bulls, and Denver currently has had for a long time an ordinance which prohibits Denverites from owning pit bulls. So what's your take on why is this such a great idea?
Great question. So this is a good idea for a few reasons. We have had a pit bull ban in Denver for over 30 years, and we're one of the very few cities that have had a ban. We have a state law that prohibits pit bull bans or breed-specific legislation. However, Denver has home rule status, so they were able to maintain that pit bull ban. It is a black mark on animal welfare, and that's super important to think about because Colorado is one of the most progressive states in animal welfare in the country. And to have this huge black mark, when I am the CEO of the Dumb Friends League, and I travel across the country talking to animal welfare experts and advocates for animals, and I hear repeatedly, we love what's coming out of Colorado. We're amazed at your success in rehoming animals and controlling stray populations and providing resources for behavior and for veterinary services for animals that need it. But you have a ban on pit bulls, and that is unconscionable in this current day and age.
So, I mean, a lot of people are very afraid of pit bulls, and there have been, numerous stories of pit bulls, mauling people, in some cases, including small children, and hurting them. The statistics seem to bear out, and this is where I want you to contradict me, that pit bulls can be very, very aggressive animals. Now, is that true or not?
Any dog can bite. And that is what we have to keep in mind, is any dog can be dangerous. Pit bulls are no more dangerous than any other breed. But here's the problem. People want a safe community, and so they put a ban in place to say we cannot have pit bulls in our community. That will make us safe. But guess what? There are pit bulls in Denver. There are pit bulls all over Denver, but what's happening with these dogs is they're being kept in homes, not put out in the public, not socialized well during their socialization period when they're puppies, not accessing behavior resources from experts to get them trained, addressing any behavior issues earlier like we would do in all of our other breeds, and not even getting the veterinary care that they need because people are scared of coming out of their home and having people realize they have a pit bull. What happens right now is if there is a pit bull in Denver, the Denver Animal Protection, a group of people that are made to protect animals, have to go in and remove that animal from that family. That is a family member in many situations, in many cases, especially right now in this time of isolation and COVID. And they're literally going to remove this animal that has not bitten anyone, has not shown any aggression. It just happens to be a breed that is banned because 30 years ago this was a decision that was made.
So you're a vet. I'd be interested. I mean, obviously certain breeds are purebreds. How do you know if an animal is actually, I mean, how does a dog qualify as a pit bull if it's not 100% purebred? How does that work?
That's one of the things we struggle with this legislation or any breed-specific legislation. So right now what happens is if there's a pit bull or a neighbor calls and says, my neighbor has a pit bull, Denver Animal Protection will respond, and one of their officers can say, oh, that's definitely not a pit bull if it doesn't look anything like a pit bull. If it could be a pit bull, then they have to have 3 different animal protection officers do separate evaluations on the animal to decide whether it qualifies as a pit bull or not. And there's no certain percentage in DNA. It's really up to those 3 folks to decide that. And then if it is, it's not allowed to live in Denver.
Is there a pit bull 23andMe or something like that? Or I mean, how could you do a DNA analysis from a blood sample?
Yeah, so there are DNA analyses, and the problem is a pit bull is not a singular breed. And there are Staffordshire Terriers, there are American Bulldogs, there's a group of dogs genetically that we as a society call a pit bull. What percentage of which one qualifies as an animal that could potentially have a different rule or law is something that they struggle with constantly. It's not black and white.
All right, I'm going to read you some statistics, and I want you to refute them or tell me why these might be wrong. So, pit bull attacks have increased almost 8 times in a 7-year period. Pit bull attacks in the U.S. rose 773% from 2007 to 2014. The number of pit bulls involved in fatal and disfiguring attacks has risen from 2007 from 78 to 603 cases. The number of children victims has increased from 30 to 264, adults from 23 to 279. How do we address a number like that? And what's potentially incorrect about that number?
Right. So what's really interesting about all the pit bull statistics is you can find as many that contradict that as support that. They are all over the place, and it really depends on the agenda of who is writing those statistics. So I could come back to you tomorrow with 50 statistics that counter every one of those statistics you just gave me. We don't have good record keeping. We don't have good documentation of that. We do know that Castle Rock overturned their pit bull ban within the last couple years, and they haven't seen an increase in any pit bull attacks or issues with pit bulls in the community. So it's not something that we experience. The other thing to keep in mind is pit bulls are allowed throughout the Metro Denver area. Aurora and Denver have a pit bull ban. So anyone who goes to a dog park, anyone who interacts in our community knows there's pit bulls here. It's not that we don't have pit bulls. It's that we have pit bulls that are hidden, pit bulls that aren't accessing services that will even make them safer for our community and improve the safety of our community.
So one statistic, again, and I would yield to your point that they can vary, but one statistic is that pit bulls are 5 to 8 times more likely to be aggressive, to be violent, to bite somebody. Now, certainly as a vet, you know that different breeds of dogs do have somewhat different personalities or different idiosyncrasies. So I would say, and there's a great example where you can correct me. I'm a huge fan of German Shepherds. And my experience with German Shepherds, including having owned one from Guide Dogs for the Blind, is they're incredibly intelligent, but they're also very, very sensitive and sometimes are quick to react. And a lot of times people are afraid of them because they're afraid they're going to be bitten or whatever. So tell me a little bit about your take professionally, both at the league but also as a vet, on the idiosyncrasies of dogs and how they can differ.
So pit bulls dogs do differ, and there are certain dogs, although it changes over time. So when I first graduated in the 90s, we were scared to death of Cocker Spaniels. All the Cocker Spaniels we saw would bite you if you looked at them sideways. Cocker Spaniels nowadays are wonderful dogs. We don't see as many of them. And what we often see is if a dog breed, when they win the American Kennel Club, they then become very popular, overbred, not necessarily bred for their personality, and we start to see behavior issues. So yes, you can breed in or breed out different behavior issues. What's interesting about pit bulls in particular is that the vast majority of pit bulls that I saw in practice, and I'm feeling their bellies, looking in their mouths, poking them with needles. Like, I'm not being the nicest person. I'm trying, but not always the nicest thing for the pit bull. The vast majority of them are wonderful. They were not the breed that I was most worried about. If they were not wonderful, they were really good at giving signals, of telling us, hey, I'm not happy with this. I'm going to growl. I would much rather have a dog growl and give me that warning than have no warning and just bite. In the shelter is a whole nother situation. I mean, we receive 20,000 animals a year, 58 a day. So I see more pit bulls at the shelter, and we see them because they stay long. They stay a long time because people are allowed to adopt them in Denver and Aurora. So a big percentage of our adoption population just can't, even if they want to adopt that animal, do so. So they stay in our shelters for long periods of time. And the vast majority of them are wonderful, wonderful dogs. There are pit bulls that are almost a breed or a social status for some groups that don't really want to be gentle and kind in our community. So sometimes some gang status, dog fighting, and those dogs are going to be trained to be pretty scary dogs. That's not what we're seeing, though. That's not the pet dog in the family that and pit bulls were actually bred for many years to be nanny dogs and to work with babies and be that protector for young children. So it varies, and a lot of it has to do with how they're trained and what our expectation is of that animal.
So, I mean, the pit bulls I've known have all been delightful, I should say, just from my own personal experience. One of the statistics that concerned me was, and of course, when you look at dogs and you look at how they are just physiologically different in terms of jaw strength and things like that, certainly the morbidity rate for people who were attacked by a pit bull is higher. Is that true, and how do we address something like that?
So it's interesting. They have a strong jaw. They do not have a jaw that locks. And many people believe that false tale that their jaw locks. That's not true. However, there are about 20 popular breeds that have stronger jaw strength than pit bulls. So that in and of itself is not a reason to say, okay, they're more dangerous than every other dog because they have a strong jaw strength. There are some great studies that look at the pound per square inch of pressure that pit bulls exert when they bite, and German Shepherds are above them on that scale. There are many other breeds that are above them on that scale. So it is fear-based. That's the problem with any breed-specific legislation, and it's not based on facts. It's not based on what happens in a community. And these are family members being ripped. I mean, and when these animals come in or when the Denver Animal Protection has to go in and take this animal out of a home, this is not the gang member's pit bull. This is the pit bull that has lived in this home since it's a puppy. It's a family member, and it's just horrible for everyone on each side of that whole situation.
So, it's one of the interesting aspects that, I think you've referenced is just the idea that by having a ban on pit bulls, you kind of create this underground pit bull existence, which actually is bad for everyone. It's certainly bad for the dog. It can result in dogs being less socialized, which means potentially more dangerous. Dogs who don't get the veterinary care that they need. What is a veterinarian's obligation if I live in Denver and I have a pit bull? Do I not go to a veterinary clinic?
Right. It's a really good question, and it's changed over time. I think it's changed over time because the community just demanded that it change over time. I don't know that the actual ordinance has changed a whole lot. But We used to, when I first started practicing in Denver in '97, we were not supposed to allow a pit bull into the building. We were not supposed to treat a pit bull. And that was an ethical dilemma for most veterinarians. And I'll be honest, most of us treated them because we could not let an animal suffer. But we were breaking the law when we did that. I'm saying this on your show. But we also...
We won't prosecute you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think the... statute of limitations has been expired. However, that did evolve over time, and now veterinarians can treat them if they show up into their practice and they need care, but they just aren't allowed to live in the city.
Yeah, I was wondering, do people in Denver who have a pit bull, go to Lafayette to see a vet, for example? Or,
for a while.
That's amazing. What about? I mean, I've had situations many times where I've had to try to stop a dog fight, and I'm kind of the crazy person who jumps right in, and I literally, there are times when I physically separated two dogs while they were fighting, or if one was very aggressive and the other was being attacked, I would literally pull the aggressive dog from behind to get it off the other dog. With pit bulls, my sense is people are much more afraid to intervene. And is that true? And is there a good reason for that?
Have any of those fights been pit bulls?
Actually, none.
Right.
None
okay.
of them
I just want to see.
You
I'm making my point.
You got me. Okay.
So yes.
Well, often they're my own dogs.
Well, there you go.
That's when you have five at a time.
If this reform happens, you can get a pit bull.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
And I have I'm going to interrupt you. I have a critically important question first. Is the target dog a pit bull?
The target dog. It's one of the breed. It's a bull terrier, which is often considered. I call them blocky-headed whatevers. There's not a clear.
Just curious. So,
back before they had the stigma, right?
And they don't use that dog anymore that I know.
Right.
Yeah. I'm disappointed, but.
Yeah, it was a cute dog.
Yeah.
So. Any dog fight is scary, any dog fight. And people have to be really careful because sometimes when people get involved, that's when the really severe injuries happen, regardless what the breed is. Making loud noises, spraying them with water, those are all such important things to do when you are faced with a dog fight. Our instinct takes over, though. It's our pet, or it's a situation that needs to be addressed immediately. I would say that pit bulls are strong, and so you have to just be careful. But that's also true for quite a few breeds that are not banned, and we successfully break up those fights in our community.
So one of the statistics I read, and again, I'm not saying any of these are written in stone because I think they were, from organizations or perspectives of those who are for breed-specific legislation, was that pit bulls are responsible for killing a very significant number of cats. So in terms of your analysis and your experience as a vet, what have you seen? And do you think that's true or not?
So we call that prey aggression. And prey aggression is something we absolutely, again, can see in any dog. It's interesting, and this is another piece about them being underground. A lot of people are getting pit bulls now from we don't know where, the internet. We do adopt pit bulls at the Dumb Friends League. We just can't adopt them to someone that lives in Denver. I'll get to the answer to your question. And so when we have a pit bull that comes to us, we do a behavior assessment. We understand, is there prey aggression? Are they triggering without warning? Are they dangerous for our community? Or is this a safe dog like any other animal in our community? By reforming this legislation, people can get pit bulls that have been screened, pit bulls that are going to be much more likely to be good citizens of our community. Again, prey aggression is a concern in any breed, and I have seen it in pit bulls, and I've seen it in German Shepherds, and I've seen it in Chihuahuas. And yes, it's a concern, and if we can have dogs that we can screen and help them be better citizens, that's going to be better for our community, regardless of the breed.
In terms of, clearly nationally and internationally, there's been a lot of concern for decades about pit bulls. Are there countries that have banned pit bulls?
Not that I know of. And it's interesting because there are more and more communities that have overturned breed-specific legislation. It's no longer acceptable. It's no longer the norm. And the communities that actually still have it are the ones that are being seen as not progressive and not doing animal welfare in a good way.
So I know that when, as a dog owner for, many, many years, my insurance in the past has covered my liability for, if my dog or one of my dogs were to bite somebody. Is that still the case today? And is there any discrimination against pit bulls? Because I know some policies in the past that I was familiar with actually would exclude certain breeds.
Right. Yes, it is. It's still part of many homeowners' policies to pay for injuries by a dog. And there are many homeowner policies that do not allow you to have certain breeds. Usually it's pit bulls, German shepherds, and Rottweilers. And there are other breeds depending on the company. So there are some communities, and there's a move towards this, of making it illegal to ban specific breeds in those policies, but it still happens.
So give me kind of an overall summary. Why should Denver citizens vote in favor of 2J, especially knowing so many of them are worried about pit bulls, are worried about being bitten? We had a repeal of the legislation in the past that passed City Council, and Mayor Hancock vetoed that appeal and kept the current law in place. Maybe first talk a little bit about your take on that.
So that was still the reform. It's the exact language that's being considered by the voters now. And it was interesting because the city council had hearings, and there were quite a few community members that testified on all different sides. These were some of the most packed hearings pre-COVID that the city council had experienced. The city council did vote to reform the breed-specific legislation, and the mayor, Mayor Hancock, felt like he couldn't sign that bill. It was his first veto as mayor. He is a good man. He had experience with a pit bull when he was a child that didn't result in injury but scared him. And he felt like with that experience, he could not sign this bill. He said he struggled with that decision. I will say that a lot of people in the community struggled with that decision as well. So that's why the city council is asking the voters to vote. It can't be vetoed if the society does feel like, if the community does feel like this is the right thing to do. So the reasons to vote yes on 2J are: we have pit bulls in our community. This will make them safer. This will give them the same opportunity that other dogs in our community have. These are family members. These are family members that are not being removed from their family because they've done anything wrong other than they are a certain breed. Families are being broken up, and animal protection officers are utilizing their time, energy, and having to really do a very difficult task of taking these animals out of a family just because of their breed. These dogs deserve better. And this reform is not a complete repeal. It keeps some structure in place. So it makes it so that owners have to register the pit bull and get a permit for the pit bull and report if the animal gets lost, microchip it, report any aggression. And then after 3 years, if that animal has not had any problems, is a good citizen in our community, then they can just have it and license it like a normal dog.
So really it's more, the reform is a process which kind of puts a pit bull on a path to freedom.
Yes, and a pit bull that didn't do anything wrong.
All right, well, fair enough. Well, I want to thank April Steele for joining me, the CEO of the Denver Dumb Friends League and a veterinarian. This is ballot issue 2J we're talking about, so make sure you make your decision and mark your ballot for our November 3rd election. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harber. The goal of my show is to inform viewers about a diverse range of topics, from our country's leadership to economic and tax policies to energy and environmental issues, with the participation of the most significant stakeholders in each arena. Our long-form approach gives each guest the time to fully speak his or her mind and gives the audience all the facts, allowing everyone to draw their own conclusions.
Thank God you do your homework, and just doing what you do is enough to begin to let them know what's happening.
I strive to bring together guests with perspectives from across the entire political spectrum to promote problem resolution through civil discourse.
Keith Olbermann and Glenn Beck and Rush Babe, frightening people and using emotion, fear, guilt, and racism. What a bunch, from the right and the left.
I've personally experienced our democratic system from the inside, and I use my knowledge and expertise on the show to get clarification of major points and expand the discussion to ensure my audience gets the uncut truth.
What is this bigotry against a third-party candidate? Do the two parties own all the voters and everyone else should shut up and stand in line?
We were on the campus together at Princeton University. Her Majesty does not look any different than she did in those days, and I wish I could say the same about myself.
I'm an ardent supporter of transparency in government and strive to play an active role in bringing out all the facts related to our nation's most challenging issues.
One of the things I've learned in life, and you certainly have learned from doing your show, is you got smart people, but they're torn apart, they're polarized. You get into a media environment where it's not things like your show, but the shout shows on talk radio or cable TV, in which there's just this tendency to score political points and be polarized.
Since my days in national talk radio, I've upheld a tradition of being truly nonpartisan, something which seems rare on the airwaves today.
Depending on your point of view, a decision of the Supreme Court might be the wrong one.
I've also found my guests talk to others involved in our nation's leadership, and they have encouraged them to come on the program as well.
We are not final because we're infallible. We are infallible because we're final. Now, no one knows what that means. What it means is we do not have the last word because we are so brilliant. We are, of course, brilliant, but only in the sense that somebody has to have the last word.
It's the focus on issues rather than personal attacks that makes guests comfortable and gives them the chance to tell their entire story. I simply let guests explain their perspective completely, then dig deeper for the audience by drawing from my own knowledge and experience.
Democracy succeeds when you're giving more and more things to people, but the years ahead we're going to have to ask more of them in taxes and expect less from government.
There doesn't seem to be anyone in either party that has any kind of appetite for asking more of people tax-wise. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're probably right, and that's a flaw in democracy.
Thanks for taking the time to check out the show. I hope this has been helpful in illustrating the nation's need for a balanced, nonpartisan program to shed light on today's issues. For more information, please go to www.harbertv.com or email producer@harbertv.com. And thanks for watching.